Hi everyone, TG Wolff here. Today's author is Erica Obi. Erica's currently hard at work at the DeCoverly Riddle, a sequel to the North Brooklyn Murder. In the meantime, why not check out another Watson and Doyle adventure, The Dead Man's Switch, in Mysteries to Die for Season 6, Move It or Lose It. And I have to say, mystery lovers, check out Brooklyn North Murder. It is filled with all of our favorite tropes. It is a fun read. All right, Jack, let's do this. Welcome to Mysteries to Die For. I am TG Wolff, and I'm here with Jack, my piano player and producer. This is a podcast where we combine storytelling with original music to put you at the heart of a mystery. All of our stories are structured to challenge you to beat the detective to the solution. These are arrangements, which means instead of word-for-word readings, you get a performance that's meant to be heard. Jack and I perform these live, front to back, no breaks, no fakes, no retakes. This is Season 7, Games People Play. Games are about competition conducted according to rules with participants working toward a goal. Games are a part of every culture and are one of the oldest forms of social interaction and engagement. Games can be fun, challenging, and exhilarating. They can also be intense, cutthroat, and lethal. This season, our authors have fashioned deadly games and unscrupulous villains to test your detective skills. This is Episode 7. Dungeons & Dragons is a featured game. This is Death of a Dungeon Master by Erica Obi. What are we doing music-wise today?
Alrighty, so the goal was to get a lyre. There's not a lyre setting, but I have an actual lyre, but I'm not going to play that. So then I went for kind of harpsichordy, which there is a harpsichord setting, but I don't like it. It sounds weird. However, the steel guitar 4 setting sounds much more like a harpsichord in my opinion.
Oh, I would have guessed that was a harpsichord.
Right? It sounds very harpsichordy.
Yeah. I would not have picked steel guitar.
I agree. The only difference is that in a harpsichord, you can only play one note at a time, and I can play like 7 at a time here if I want. See, that was 6. Cool. I'll do 10. Doesn't that sound great?
Lovely. 10 fingers, 10 notes.
Apparently.
All right. Let's get into Death of a Dungeon Master. Crossroads of the World. The Agora at Tetopolis, the crossroads of the world. A vast, steamy bazaar where anything you can imagine can be had for a price. The unimaginable costs a wee bit more. The words rang from the front of the lecture hall where a man read from a leather-bound binder at a smart podium. 4 panelists listened from where they were scribbling notes at a long table beneath a bank of computer monitors where their names were scripted. Gorgo Mandelbite, Gnome. Alidor Silverleaf, Elf. Tyrion Quickstir, Halfling, Sellsword. Trixie, Trainee Mage. Geez, Doyle, are you moonlighting as this guy's ghostwriter? I asked. My dear Watson, how could you mistake that for my prose? Doyle's disembodied voice rang from my wireless earbud. He managed to sound genuinely hurt. A pretty good trick for an AI program. But as Doyle himself will tell you, ChatGPT is artificial intelligence. He's the real thing. It's better than believing that there's someone out there who can write as badly as you do, I said. If you're going to be hurtful, perhaps I should just leave, Doyle sniffed. Don't ask me how a bot can sniff without a nose. Just trust me that he can. I wished I could. Leave, that is, not sniff. But an alert had come in on my phone while I was peacefully contemplating my Saturday morning coffee. And, as the ranking IT officer at DeSales College, it was my job to head down to the computer center and check that all the power strips were plugged in. There was no point in even hoping that the job might be handled by Tim, the IT lab director, who greeted me with his usual blend of resentment and contempt. I couldn't fault him in his attitude. My reputation as the leading tech guru at DeSales College was the result of pure luck. I'll leave it up to you to decide whether it was good luck or bad. Tim, on the other hand, was the real deal. A pure game theorist with the kind of technology chops that made Doyle slink into the corner wherever he drew near. Doyle gets cagey whenever I ask him why he's so afraid of Tim. All I can say is that it couldn't be the persistent body odor that drove away most humans, since, as we've already established, Doyle doesn't have a nose. Tim gestured toward the auditorium, half filled with the panelists and a sparse audience wearing t-shirts decorated with dragons, unicorns, and Celtic knotwork. Idiots, all tried to log in at once and got themselves a full-scale DDoS attack, and that caused the system to shut down, Tim said. DDoS, as in dedicated denial of service. If any would know, it would be Tim. Word was that he had a very lucrative side gig in engineering just such attacks on behalf of several competing governments. But don't take my word on it, he said. Feel free to stick around and satisfy yourself there's nothing else. After all, it's your signature going on the official reports, not mine. Olives, honey, spices, and fruits from the surrounding countryside, the narrator's amplified voice rang out from the podium. Of course, you could find them if your imagination stopped at a greengrocer's. If you ask me, I would have guessed the narrator's imagination tended more toward junk food aisle. He wore a black t-shirt emblazoned with the words Dungeonator, and his dad jeans were cinched above his waist with a restraining belt. The other panelists sported pointy ears and glittery eye makeup, but according to Doyle, who had a knack for ferreting out such details, the Dungeonator needed no costume to attract the virtual audience that had also tuned in to follow the adventures of the self-proclaimed king of the Dungeon Masters. Love potions from the harems of Katsumi? Look for the discreet flutter of the white silk pennon. The dark magics of Ultima Thule? Press aside the mist of Ingus Fautus over there, if you dare. Assassins from the monasteries of Tel Simbat? No need to struggle up the hidden path of the far mountains. You can find them just in the striped tent. Make sure to have your gold pieces ready, and a dagger to defend them. A harp sounded, causing the overhead monitors to shimmer. Tim spun to his workstation with a frown as a voice sang out, A dagger is a paltry foil to a bardic song and story. Stand ready to defend yourself and duel for dungeon glory. The script on the overhead monitors dissolved as an image of a cloaked man. His hood was drawn low to hide his face, but the golden cat's head, with the glittering emerald eyes that crowned his bard's staff, was familiar to real and virtual audiences alike. Enter Catstaff, Doyle murmured, bardic legend and the Dungeonator's sworn enemy, ever since the centuries-long riddling contest that left them both spent on the shoals of the narrow sea. The harp sounded again. You spin your tales of myth and lore and bid the masses hearken. The figure on the screens turned to address the audience. I feel you now to touch the truth no mortal mind can darken. Why are you here? The Dungeonator cried. Who sent you? You've been forbidden to enter the Agora. The figure raised their arms? No haven's proof from Bardic Wick, not least the dungeon's middle. I throw the glove and call you forth. Time now that we two riddle. I'm done riddling with you, the Dungeonator shouted. You have no part to play in this tale. And yet the cat commands 9 lives, the Dungeonator won. The bard raised his staff. The cat's head glittered with a strange power. So speak your piece and answer this. What cuts sharper than the bard's tongue? Frantic, the Dungeonator stalked the stage. Begone! You have no place here anymore. Begone, I tell you, begone! As Tim typed frantically at his workstation, the Dungeonator seized the cord leading to the monitors and yanked it out of the floor. The screens exploded into a flash of white light. The Dungeonator, too, exploded, springing into the air with the agility that belied his girth. Sparks flew from his heels and sent him dancing across the stage, as if pulled by catstaff invisible puppet strings. Then, with a soft sigh, he collapsed. I gasped, as helpless as the audience to decide what had just happened. Doyle provided the grim summation from my earpiece. Death was so commonplace in Tetopolis that the live audience didn't notice at first. But when they did, they sprang to their feet in furious applause. The virtual audience was not slow to follow, punching their cell phones with shaking fingers in order to be the first to go viral with the footage. For there was no denying it. The death of Dungeon Master Daryl, the Dungeonator Mahoney, on stage, in the middle of a live stream, was truly the Dungeons & Dragons event of all time. That was a pretty good opening there, wasn't it?
Yes. I forgot we were doing pauses.
You
I was
forget.
just like, all right, what's the new chord progression I'm going to be playing? Nifty. By the way, if you ever wonder how I choose my new chord progressions, I look at a note and I start playing it and I go, what key? I don't know. Let's play this other note. Oh, I guess I have to be in this key now. That's how it all works.
Did you ever play Dungeons & Dragons?
I played with Dad a bit, like when we were kids. He
Yeah.
got annoyed.
At you?
No, at us, because my brother and I, we would just like obsess over like a singular chest that had nothing in it. We just inspect it for 2 hours, and my dad would get really pissed off. And yeah, we haven't played much since then.
I have to say I've never played Dungeons & Dragons. I think I would like it because of the imagination part, but Dad says I wouldn't, it's too slow paced for me.
It's really slow paced. That's why another reason we got bored is because we would sit there, and clearly my dad had thought, so like put some thought into some of this. Most of the time he used like a world or mission someone else already made, or one that he had already done a long time ago when he played when he was a kid. But yeah, there's a lot of what's it called, exposition all the time. Yeah,
Much like Dungeon Master Daryl was doing before he blew up here.
much like Dungeon Master Daryl.
All right, should we find out about the dread power of the bard?
Yes. What did the bard do?
Well, this is the next chapter, the dread power of the bard.
Nifty.
We saw it all, the elf spoke first. As did the trainee mage, consulted her phone and then frowned. Only 9,675 viewers logged in. Daryl's numbers were falling. Not Daryl's numbers, the health elf corrected her. Yours. Daryl warned you not to co-brand with the pet crystal startup. Warned, the mage trainee snorted. I didn't know that was another way to say relentlessly trolled. Everyone told you what Daryl was like when you came on board, the halfling said. Guy didn't shed a tear when I told him I dropped nearly $5,000 on an avatar design. Just told me if I wanted anime, I should look elsewhere. The only place I want to look is on YouTube when the video finally comes out, the gnome said. Our numbers will be through the roof. One thing you can say for Daryl, the elf agreed. Even in death, he was a showman. Applause interrupted their every statement, as if they were still at the bazaar of Tetopolis, instead of the college lecture hall where a dead man lay at the smart podium. Cat staff was gone, as was the virtual audience. I had turned off the video cameras as soon as I had made sure campus security was on its way. But the live audience was determined to make the most of being asked to remain in their seats by treating everything as part of the entertainment. When Mac Byrne, who is campus security at DeSales College, stalked into the lecture hall, he greeted me with an accusing glare, as if this was somehow my fault. That's not as unfair as it might seem. I'm not a gamer, nor a tech guru, except in the minds of a few shadowy organizations with very deep pockets. I'm Mary Watson, college librarian, who happened to program a mystery writing AI bot that has turned into a lucrative side gig for me and DeSales College. So, when mysteries like this turn up on campus, which they do with what Byrne would describe as suspicious regularity, I get called in, as does my bot, Doyle, who is always willing to offer his 2 cents when it's least desired. A true showman might have opted for a few enhanced special effects, he opined. If only Daryl had bothered to ask, I could have pointed him in the right direction. Byrne pretended not to notice Doyle chatting in my earbud, which could only be a sign of how flummoxed he was by the entire situation. I wouldn't say the relationship is the last epic battle between man and machine, but it comes close. Look, a man is dead. Byrne finally steeled himself to say to the gnome, halfling, elf, and mage, who were waiting to give their statements, I need a clear timeline of what happened before the detectives from the state police show up. How much of a timeline do you need? The gnome asked. We saw what happened. Half the world saw what happened, the elf sighed. Or at least 9,675 viewers, the trainee mage said, plus the live audience. We were sitting right next to him, the halfling agreed. It was Catstaff, the bard, who killed him, walked right up the middle of the street, lowered his staff, and began to mock him. Mock him, Byrne repeated. It's the dread power of the bard, the trainee mage told him. The audience concurred by bursting into applause. In the cave of Tim the Enchanter. Byrne managed to contain himself until we were settled at Tim's desk in the office that adjoined the IT lab. You would suppose that would be no effort for a man who, by his own admission, had survived 80 days in the wilderness with nothing but a packet of baby wipes and a canteen, but it was a near miss. Byrne shook his head at the video recording that I'd called up on the computer. So these people just sit in a college lecture hall and watch while people who call themselves gnomes and wizards sit at a podium and make up stories? Beats sitting in a lecture hall and listening to a keynote address on the eco-feminist reimaginings of Walden, I said. If you say so. Byrne watched for a couple of minutes and then asked, Since when does DeSales College sponsor live-action D&D at games? A number of colleges have jumped into the esports realm. Some are even offering scholarships. I quoted the memo from Student Services. When you think about it, how is it any different from March Madness? Byrne's face registered his opinion of any and all such games. He wasn't big on virtual guns, understandable in a man who had an entire career dodging real ones before he moved to Morgansburg to escape his background in Black Ops. So what's up with the tech guy? Tim, I asked. As in Tim the Enchanter, I supposed? Byrne sighed. Actually, Tim is his given name, but the name check reflects well on your geek creds, I said. And no, he doesn't like me much, mostly because he's quite justifiable in that opinion, as he is far better qualified than I to head up IT, even without the extra credibility that comes from his personal hygiene. Any chance he could have sabotaged the game to take you down? Byrne asked. I don't see why, or for that matter, how. I was standing right next to him the whole time, and we both saw the same thing as the rest of the audience saw. Catstaff Zoom-bombed the meeting and mocked Daryl to death. You're sure about the Zoom-bomb part? There's no chance this was planned, part of the show? Byrne asked. Take a look at Daryl's face on the video, I said. He's as shocked as the rest of the audience. A moment of silence before Byrne drew in a deep breath and confronted the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Cause of death mocking? Seriously? I shrugged and withdrew into my chair. I suppose this is not the time to comment that satire was a major battlefield force with the Irish Druids, but if I don't tell you, Doyle certainly will. Thank you, Byrne said. The next time my assault weapon jams, I know just what to do. He stared into space for a moment, with the eyes of a man who is contemplating 1,000 remembered hells. Then he got to his feet. I guess we need to talk to this Catstaff. You and your little friend Doyle want to ride along as magical bodyguards? A delicate operation. Catstaff, aka Percy Giles, lived on the wrong side of the tracks of the Morgansburg Fun Rail, in the perennially gentrifying waterfront district where head shops housed in abandoned carousels jostled cheek by jowl with B&Bs that still bore traces of their past lives as rooming houses and communes. It wasn't a long drive, but I used the time to allow Doyle to do his thing and pull down everything he could find on Catstaff from the internet. By all accounts, Daryl and Catstaff go a long way back, and not in a good way. I filled in Byrne as he pulled his battered pickup to a halt at the storefront from which Giles ran his small press, which wouldn't necessarily stop them from staging a confrontation on a D&D webcast any more than it does in the WWE. But Tim confirmed that Daryl took the feud seriously enough to block Giles from the webcast. At least, that seems to be what exiled means. As soon as the tinkle of the old-fashioned shop bell announced us, Giles bustled from a back room, dusting his hands on a paint-smeared apron. He was one of the leftover hippies that had gained tenure at DeSales College back in the day when there was such a thing. He had long since trimmed his hair to a Leon in Maine and traded in his tie-dyes for a velvet waistcoat and a Wildian disaffection. When he wasn't avoiding his teaching responsibilities, he published poetry in the form of rebuses, many of which featured cats, presumably the same ones that lounged among the cases of defunct typefaces and bookbinding tools that were strewn everywhere. I hope this guy speaks English, Byrne muttered, because I'm not going to be responsible for my actions if I have to talk in rhyming couplets. Honestly, officer, I have moved beyond such doggerel and speak only in the sacred poetry of the Exeter Riddle Book now, Giles said with an arrogant tilt of his chin. And assuming there's no one here who has mastered the intricacies of Anglo-Saxon alliteration. Guat vigardana in gardanum, piadsianum pyrum gifunum, Doyle's voice sounded in my ear. Stow it, I muttered. I will say, in simple English, Giles continued, that if you bothered to telephone like any civilized person, I could have saved you a trip and informed you that I have not so much as thought about Daryl Mahoney in the last 2 years. If he says otherwise, he's lying. Daryl's not saying anything, Byrne said. Daryl's dead. Giles shut his eyes and murmured something in Old English. After they burn my body, tell my warriors to build a great burial mound on the cliffs that stick out into the sea. The sailors searing their ships on the glooming waters will see it and call it Beowulf's Barrow, and my people will remember me, Doyle translated helpfully. Beowulf's dying words. I gathered as much, I said. Giles drew a deep breath and opened his eyes. If Daryl is truly dead, my only hope is that he can find the peace there that he never found as a dungeon master. Now, if there isn't anything else, I have a stab-stitched cover that you've interrupted at a very critical juncture. Daryl's dead, Byrne said. And we've got quite literally hundreds of witnesses who are prepared to swear that they watched you mock him to death. If Giles had been one of his own cats, I would have said his ears pricked. And is your investigation proceeding on the theory that that is a fact in this case? My theories don't matter, Byrne said. We're here to find out what you have to say. What do you want me to say? That I did not mock Daryl Mahoney to death? If so, consider it stated clearly and for the record. Giles held up a finger before either of us could assure him that we were on the same page when it came to that. Not that I couldn't have done it, he said. The powers of the bard are dread indeed, but they are meant for good, and you have a sacred responsibility to use them as such. With great power comes great responsibility, Doyle said. Oh, come on, I told him. Spider-Man's lowbrow even for you. What about the Zoom bombing Daryl's meeting? Byrne asked. Was that you? Giles shook his head. I told you. I've moved beyond all of that. So you deny that you were the one in the video, Byrne pressed. I couldn't possibly answer, having never seen the video in question, Giles said. It's no secret that I had altercations with Daryl in the past, and some of them may have been immortalized in cyberspace. More accurately, 176 are still floating around the cyberverse. Doyle's voice popped up in my earbuds without warning. The man could hardly be called an influencer. Giles continued on. But I can only repeat that I have moved beyond all that. I spend all my spare hours immersed in the deeper mysteries of bardolatry. That isn't even what the word means. Doyle's voice is the coarse computer-generated, but he can still attain heights of outrage. Bardolatry refers specifically to the corpus legend, scholarship, and literary hero worship that surrounds Shakespeare, the Bard of Avon. Someone Zoom-bombed that meeting, Byrne said. The question now is who, and whether that person is the same person who killed Daryl Mahoney. Well, it wasn't me, Giles denied definitively. And if you won't take my word for it, perhaps you would like to question the surgeon and nurses in the local ER who can attest to the fact that I underwent an extremely delicate operation. What kind of operation? Byrne asked. Giles clammed up. I'm afraid that's a private matter. There is such a thing as patient confidentiality, even in this benighted world. $100 quatlus on the newcomers. So the state boys have issued a preliminary finding is death by misadventure, Byrne said when we were back at Tim's office at the IT lab. They've asked me to provide them with updates about any evidence that might call that finding into question. But it's pretty safe to say they won't kick up a fuss if misadventure is the final finding as well. Then it sounds like it's up to us, I said. Any ideas about where we should start? All I can think of is to take another look at the video, Byrne said. If there really are 150 videos of cat staff photobombing Daryl, 176, Doyle's voice rang from Tim's desktop computer to correct him. Someone might have spliced one of those in, Byrne finished. So we're looking for someone with some kind of technical chops, I said. If that's how you describe any 12-year-old whose parents once tried to put content controls on the family PC. But if we establish the how, we're at least one step closer to establishing the who. Means, motive, opportunity. Byrne ticked them off on his fingers. So far, we've got none of the three. The only way to start is by finding one of them. Let's go to the video replay. I frowned as soon as the image of the podium swam up on the computer screen. I don't know if that qualifies as viral these days, but that video has already racked up some 50,000 views. I think Daryl may have achieved immortality posthumously, I can never say that word, after he was dead. By starring in a snuff film? Byrne's jaw set in distaste. We should get that pulled down. If you do, I said, someone will just go ahead and monetize it on the dark web. As a matter of fact, my eyes narrowed and I took a closer look at the screen and then zoomed in the video as far as it could go. It may be that someone has already done that, at least when it comes to Daryl's games. You see those tiny cubes in the corner that might be a pair of dice? Byrne took a look and then nodded. Do you think there's some kind of Easter egg? You know, something hidden on the screen that you can click on to open a background program, but only if you know it's there? I squinted at the image. I'm not sure. I don't think you can insert an Easter egg into a video, at least not anymore. Once upon a time you could, but they shut that down when they shut down Flash Player in 2021. Back then it was exploitable as all get out, ransomware's platform of choice, but Adobe caught it in time. Shutting down a platform isn't the same thing as eradicating the code from the web, Byrne said. Just like barring cat staff from the webcast isn't the same as eradicating old videos of them. My voice rose in excitement. Doyle, can you nose around under the hood of those dice and see if there are any Flash Player codes down there? And if you find anything, can you trace it where it goes very, very carefully? The dice shivered and rolled before I was done speaking. Moments later, the video dissolved and the computer screen was filled with the crowded tournament field. Brightly embroidered pennons blazed with unicorns, dragons, and golden lions flooded above the grandstand, which was crowded with cheering creatures of every description. A dragon king lounged on silken pillows along the court of halflings, gnomes, and dwarves in the royal box. While on the dusty field, a thrashing whirlwind was locked in mortal combat with an elfin knight. The wizard tallied the score, and a unicorn scratched the changing odds on a chalkboard with its golden horn. A racetrack tote, whose hat was stuffed with betting slips, strolled over to greet us. Welcome to the arena, the most exciting action in all of Tetopolis. Can I interest you gentlemen in a friendly wager? I took a close look at that avatar. When you've known a program as long as I have, you begin to spot tells. Doyle is nothing but a disembodied voice when he's confined to my smartphone. But when you give him a screen and an entire internet as his playground, well, he gets creative. Doyle, is that you? And are you taking bets? On what? I shut my eyes and answered my own question. Please don't tell me you're gambling on whether or not Daryl died. The Avatar's eyes widened innocently. Taking bets on an already known outcome? That wouldn't be only unethical. It's more than likely to get my knees broken. I sighed. You don't have knees. Honestly, Watson, I prize your sturdy literal-mindedness as much as anyone, but as De Quincey has shown us, it takes the imagination to discern the true art of the murderer. Then imagine this, I said. I want a straight Boolean answer, Doyle. No provocation. Yes or no only. Are you taking bets on whether or not Daryl died? Strictly speaking, I'm not taking bets on anything, he said. I simply retrieved this hat when its owner precipitously fled the premises the moment I walked in. Doyle adjusted the brim to illustrate the point, scattering the betting slips that had been tucked into the band in the process. Or to put it in my sturdily literal-minded terms, you weren't taking bets on Daryl dying, but someone was? I asked. I believe it's far more likely that someone was taking bets on the outcome of the original game, Doyle said. To judge from the dust on the brim, this isn't the first time it's been used. Or, to put it in sturdily literal-minded terms, those Easter eggs weren't new. So these slips represent actual bets. I clicked on one of the scattered slips to enlarge it. It read, 100 quatlus on the newcomers. If nothing else, someone has a sense of humor, I said. The currency is from The Gamesters of Triskelion, a classic Star Trek episode featuring disembodied brains with no greater purpose in life than to play endless games wagering on the lives of hapless flesh and blood creatures that wandered into their world. An apt metaphor, wouldn't you say? Byrne scanned the screen. His eyes narrowed as if he was searching for snipers. If we could leave out the literary analysis for the moment, along with the dragons. It's a wyvern, Doyle said. Wyvern, Byrne corrected. It would seem. Wyvern have 2 legs, Doyle told him. Dragons have 4. Leaving out both dragons and wyverns, along with any trolls, halflings, or random dwarfs, Byrne said tightly. If someone went to all the trouble to embed an Easter egg in Daryl's D&D videos, I'm guessing it wasn't just to entertain his friends. It strikes me as a lot more likely that there is real money at stake here, or at least cryptocurrency, which may or may not be the same thing. Which means, I said, that we've been looking in the wrong place when it comes to motive. Cat Staff's Zoom bomb made us assume revenge was the motive, so we never bothered to consider the other possibilities. Once more, Byrne held up 3 fingers. Sex, revenge, and money are the classic threesome when it comes to motive, but so far we've only considered one of them. Big mistake. Because frankly, if someone was wanting real action on this game, that's a lot better motive than some war between wizards. And here you're always accusing me of binary thinking, Doyle muttered. He's got a point, I said. Why couldn't it be both, revenge and money at the same time? After a moment's consideration, Byrne conceded. I suppose I should thank you for not including sex in that theory. I've already gotten too many pictures in my head that cannot be unseen. He pulled out his phone. Does FaceTime qualify as making a telephone call like a civilized person? When Giles' face swam into view on the phone, he was immersed in a painting of a cat's portrait with a tiny brush that looked like it only had 1 hair. What is it now, officer? He gestured at the cat-shaped eluded letter that he was creating. As you can see for yourself, I'm a bit busy. This will just take a minute, Byrne said. I just thought it was fair to let you know that the state boys want me to knock on the door of every ER within 100 miles with your picture, telling them that you're our prime suspect in murder. Now, I don't want to go to that effort any more than you want me to go to that effort. So how about you just come clean and tell me which ER you went to so I can get them both off our backs? Giles' face froze. I think you're blowing a simple Lansing to treat a bad reaction to library paste a little out of proportion. Now that's something I can work with, Byrne said, as another cat signaled its agreement by rubbing its hindquarters across the camera. All I need is for you to show me your hands and the surgical incisions. Giles nudged the cat out of the way irritably. The infection was not on my hands. Then where was it? Byrne asked. I sprang to my feet. Maybe everyone would be more comfortable if I left. I knew I would be. Oh, don't be mishish. Giles pushed back his luxuriant mane to show an angry shaved patch behind each ear. The adhesive that came with the prosthetics was scarcely strong enough. The ears kept sliding off as if I was some sort of Scottish fold crossbreed. Who could blame me for trying something stronger? Now, if there isn't anything else, Bast here is reminding me that my babies are very particular about their dinner time.
Well, that's creepy.
I love that line about where is it? And she's like, I don't need to be here. I was like, yeah, I don't need to be here either.
Missish. I've learned so many words today.
Oh my goodness. I should have probably prepped with the thesaurus or a dictionary a little bit more. There were a few words I was like, oh boy, I hope I'm close.
It makes me want to play RuneScape.
Why does it make you want to play RuneScape?
I don't know. I saw a video of a guy playing RuneScape this morning, and I was thinking about it, and I was playing Mass Effect 2, and I was like, this is great, but I also could be doing RuneScape, and then we're doing this, and I'm like, you know what? It's a great game to play.
RuneScape.
I'm not going to because I'd have to pay for the subscription thingy. I don't want to because I have no money. So that's what this is for, guys. This podcast is my career now. I'm dropping out of college. I will not be dropping out of college.
You will not be dropping out of college. I paid the bill, or Dad paid the bill. You're going.
Mm-hmm. Fun times.
All right, Jack. So tell me, do you believe in magic?
Like the song? Do you believe in magic? That one.
Yeah.
Is that a Beach Boys? I almost said Beastie Boys. That would not be right. Is that a Beach Boys song?
I don't know. I don't ever win at that game. I'm horrible at names. But it is the name of our next chapter.
Well, I don't believe in magic, actually.
But you want to play Runestone.
Escape.
Wow,
you're gonna get a lot of hate for that.
Runes are stones, aren't they?
It's like taboo to mispronounce a video game name.
Well, you know what?
Somebody has spent.
I'm a middle-aged mom. Everybody expects me to mispronounce video game names.
That's fair. Like, people have spent like tons of money and like thousands of hours on that game for you to be like Runestone. Is that like Minecraft? And
Duly
someone's
noted.
having an aneurysm, and they're like, I'm never listening to Mysteries to Die For again.
Well, I have to let you do all the talking about video games so I don't like insult anybody by accident with my unintelligence on such things.
I don't think our main listeners are big video game players. Something tells me.
I don't know. If you like mysteries, do you like those video games?
Let us know on Twitter. Are we on Twitter? What are we on? Are we on anything?
We're mostly on Facebook. We're
and on
Twitter.
crack.
No.
We're on Facebook. So let us know on Facebook if you play video games. Candy Crush doesn't count, all you moms out there.
See,
I'm
there are mom video games, and
I'm not talking about mobile games. Okay, I don't care if you play. I don't know any other.
I just signed up for the New York Times game subscription.
Oh,
I play Wordle.
There we go. That's a real mom game right there.
All right, let's find out about magic. Wow, those are some. Did you do that on purpose?
Pick a letter A through G. Yeah, A through G.
Pick D.
Oh, D. Okay, that'll be our. All right, I'm gonna make a thingy out of that.
All right, he's gonna make a thingy out of D. As soon as he had ended the call, Byrne ran his hands across the close-cropped hair in frustration. We've got to find out who's taking these bets, because if we find them, I'll give you 1,000 to 1 odds we'll find the person who killed Daryl. What about Gorgo the Norm or Elidor the Elf, I asked. They both seemed a lot more concerned about the ratings than Daryl being dead. I don't know, Byrne said. Would they have been so quick to admit that in front of a live audience if they had really done it? I shrugged. If you rule them out, that only leaves the halfling who's out $5,000 and Trixie the trainee with her pet crystals. You think she read ahead into the Mocking to Death chapter of her magic textbook? Ah, she's no Siegfried and Roy, Byrne said. And then the light bulb went off over my head. More or less literally. DeSales College is fitted with those irritating motion-sensing light fixtures that are supposed to save energy but seem to pride themselves on going on and off when you least expect it. I moved to put us back in the light. Or to put it slightly differently, we allowed ourselves to be misdirected about the means of Daryl's murder just as badly as we did the motive. Because Daryl Mahoney wasn't killed by a Zoom bomb any more than he was killed over one. Daryl Mahoney was killed by a stripped electrical wire. Go on, Byrne said with a nod. I warmed to my theme. Misdirection again. We've been so busy worrying about gnomes and prosthetic ears, we haven't managed to see what we're really looking at. Take away the Zoom bomb, the halflings, and the bardic curse, and what do you have? A murderer standing in front of a live audience, performing the impossible. A magic trick, Byrne said, just like Siegfried and Roy. And what is the key to any stage magic trick, I asked? Doyle was beginning to fidget in a way that suggested he was about to answer my question with an insightful overview of the history of magic together with a working categorization of the types of illusions according to the several of the most respected authorities. Misdirection, I said quickly before he could butt in. That's what all the D&D details are, nothing but misdirection. Daryl Mahoney wasn't killed at the Agora at Tetopolis, and he wasn't killed by an angry bard. He was killed by a stripped electrical wire right here in DeSales College. Tricky method at best, Byrne mused. I had a jury rig once when I hijacked a submarine off the Faroes, and I can't say I liked it. On the other hand, it's nearly impossible to prove. The only catch is getting the right person to grab the wire. I gotta say I had a few tense moments when an entire flock of puffins... Circus, Doyle murmured. What? Byrne snapped. The proper collective of puffins is a circus, just like the proper collective of bears is sleuth. The proper collective of cats is well known to be a clouder, as is Kindle for kittens. Thank you, Doyle, I said, turning back and prompting Byrne. The puffins decided to land on the high-tension wires. I gasped. Jesus, I'm sorry I asked. Relax, the puffins were fine, he assured me. Birds always are because they aren't grounded. I thought that was an old wives' tale. I shut my eyes, trying to eradicate the image of fried puffins. To get back to the matter at hand, I said, we've got a man who is electrocuted. Who do you point the finger at when that happens? Well, the person who threw the switch. Our enchanting friend Tim, Byrne said, then immediately shook his head. That doesn't prove he even knew about the stripped wire, let alone that he stripped it himself. Fair enough, I said. Let's leave that much for now and move on to motive. Do you see anything that is motive enough to kill Daryl? Byrne gave me a clipped nod. Protecting an online betting operation is one hell of a motive for anyone, if you ask me. All right, Jacques, we be at the deliberation.
We do be. Oh, you know what? That's a good accent. I should play a pirate game. Like Sea of Thieves. That's a good. I was thinking about that the other day. Also,
I need to work on my accents.
I came up with the word last night when I was showering. I wasn't showering. What was I doing? When I was brushing my teeth that I really like, and I just thought about it again. Coinkadinkly.
Coinkadinkly? Like
everyone says instead of coincidence, a coinkadink. We'll add Illy at the end. It's coinkadinkly. Anyway, who murdered someone?
Well, first I want to remind people that we are ad-free. In exchange for not making you listen to ad about video games, we are asking you to support our authors and check out their backlists and pick up a title. This week is Erica Obe. The Brooklyn North Murder, Watson and Doyle's first full-length mystery, is currently available from your favorite retailer. I'll put the link in the show notes. And that's as Erica is working on the sequel. So like I said, I read this one just for the fun of it. It wasn't like, something I did for the podcast, and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Good for you.
All right, Jack. So the fates were not smiling upon Daryl the Dungeonator Mahoney this day. But good fortune... But good fortune shines upon him with the sharp wits of Watson, Doyle, and Mac Byrne, and us.
Nifty.
So here are the characters we've met in the order of introduction.
Okay.
Gorgo Manglebit, the gnome who was more interested in ratings than Daryl.
All right.
Alador Silverleaf, the elf who likewise was in it for the views,
Okay.
Tryon Trickster, the halfling who is out $5,000 for his designer avatar,
Nifty.
Trixie the mage trainee who is getting harassed for her deal with the pet gem startup,
Oh my God, there's so many.
Tim the enchanter, the head of the IT lab who is rumored to be a hacker in his spare time,
Oh my God, I'm never going to get this.
and Percy Catstaff Giles, the professor of poetry who was reportedly a powerful bard.
I have not a clue.
Well, here's what we know.
All right.
All right.
Tell me what I know. I don't know anything.
Mary Watson and Doyle were called to the auditorium by an alert indicating an IT issue at the D&D event. Tim had set everything up and was digitally running the event and reported that a system crash happened when too many people signed on simultaneously.
Interesting.
Daryl was reading the introduction to the dungeon when Catstaff zoom-bombed the event, challenging Daryl to a riddle-off. Daryl was angry and responded by attempting to pull the power plug to the virtual audience. The cord he grabbed was stripped to the wires. He died on stage by electrocution, not by mocking as the audience believes he did.
Okay.
Tim testified that the Dungeonator and Catstaff were bitter rivals. The 176 videos supported his story.
Okay, fair enough.
Percy Catstaff Giles testified that he'd moved beyond the rivalry and hadn't interacted with the Dungeonator in over 2 years. He denied zoom bombing Daryl and or killing him with any method.
Then who zoom bombed him?
The gnome, elf, halfling, and mage trainee were sitting at the table on stage during the event. They all had reason to be upset with Daryl.
Okay, fair enough.
The video of Daryl's death had a backdoor to a virtual world where some character had been taking bets on the outcome of the D&D game.
Nifty.
So, Byrne doesn't have Bard Dread, but he does have handcuffs. On whom, using proper grammar, should he use them?
Oh my God, you gave me facts. I still not a clue. Okay. Okay, pull up the list. All right, we're going to go through this. So here's the thing. I had trouble discerning what was real and what was, like, not real.
In the dungeon?
In the dungeon. I still don't know. Not a clue. Every once in a while it would say a real person's name and I'd be like, oh, is that, like, in real life? No, not a clue.
Okay, well, let's start this way. Do you believe that Percy Catstaff Giles had given up his rivalry with the Dungeonator?
Yes, because I think it's more interesting that somebody else. I'm doing this based on what I think is cooler. I think it'd be more interesting if someone else did it, and somehow they all thought he did it.
Okay, so you are putting Percy in the no category.
Percy Jackson is free to go.
Okay, so then we have the 4 players,
Yes.
and so Tryon was mad because he was out $5,000.
He didn't do it.
Trixie was mad because she was getting pressured to drop her side deal.
That one might be it.
And then the gnome and the elf were more interested in their own ratings than in Daryl and his, death or life.
Yeah, you see, I have a feeling somewhere in there, she mentioned like, oh, he was here and that's how he did it, but I did not.
Well, all 4 of those were on stage, sort of sitting at a table over to the
So all
side.
of them had like the opportunity to have done it, right?
It doesn't really say. The only thing we hear from Tim was that, everything, the power whatever, glitched out because everybody logged on too quickly.
So like lights turned off as well?
It's just it's a little bit vague about what kind of alarm it was. But it sounds like it was more IT, so probably not the power. But you know what happens, like when all of you are gaming at the same time and then you all complain.
Yeah. So
that kind of thing.
So who stripped who stripped the power cord?
Doyle would like that joke.
Doyle would love that joke. Who stripped the power cord and when was it stripped? Was it stripped from the start?
Right.
Did someone do that when the power went out?
Yeah.
Because nothing really happened when the power went out, right? Wait.
No. I mean, an alarm went to Mary's phone.
Yeah.
And so then our last suspect is Tim the Enchanter, who's the head of the IT lab. So he was the guy who set everything up and then had to fix it after there was that glitch.
He seems like he might have a weird amount into this that we don't know about. He's got like secret cash.
What?
It's Tim.
It's Tim.
It's probably not Tim, but I'm going to say I'm putting my money on Tim. Just like someone put their money on something else. I don't remember who was betting on what.
Yeah. Do you have a reason behind it?
I said bet, and I liked the way it sounded in my mouth.
Okay.
But I happened to be talking about Tim when I said it.
Okay.
So I'm going with him. Don't let me down, Tiny Tim. Well, he's not tiny. He's like a full-grown man. All right.
Before we go into the big reveal, a reminder that our ebook and print books are available as companions to all of our seasons 4, 5, 6, and 7. Part 1 for this season, which is called Opening Gambit, released in March, and Part 2, which is Final Move, will release in September. Do buy one for yourself and a mystery lover you love. The dimes and quarters from book sales do support the podcast and keep Jack in tacos and whatever else he's into that given day. Alrighty, Van. The King's Business. I paused to frame my next words. Even when Doyle had just turned up the clue that breaks the case, any suggestion of cooperation between Doyle and Byrne needed to be handled delicately. We could go the speakeasy route and raid the place, I said. In cyberspace? Byrne glanced at the arena where the Elfin Knight and the Wyvern were still duking it out. You mean your little friend could. I hear and obey, Doyle said. Moments later, the wooden gates thundered beneath mailed fists, and hobnailed troll feet stomped into the arena. King's business, cried their leader, who had a familiar-looking hat stuffed with betting slips perched atop his troll horns. I don't suppose you would have been content with a simple data dump, I said to Doyle's avatar. His only reply was to unfurl a warrant embossed with official-looking seals. Faulty W7, improperly filed 1099, tax evasion in the first degree. Long live the Dragon King of Tetopolis. These spoils are forfeit. Death to all who resist. The trolls charged into the grandstands, wrestling gold pieces from gnomes, halflings, and wizards alike to stuff their pockets of their ragged trousers. Doyle, I said, may I remind you that skimming from a thief is still robbery. The door that connected Tim's office to the IT lab burst open and Tim flung himself toward the nearest keyboard, only to find himself intercepted by Byrne doing his patent imitation of Gregor Klagan. Trust me, it's compelling enough to make you wonder which one was the original. You're in enough trouble without assaulting a law officer, Byrne said. So what do you say? You sit down and tell us your side of the story. Right here, right now, because you've got one chance. Trust me, whoever's masterminding this operation is going to throw you under the bus as soon as the state boys come knocking. What do you mean, whoever? Who do you think is the mastermind behind the arena? I'm the mastermind, Tim cried. This is my operation. At least it was until Daryl came along. Daryl was the one who decided he was Steve Wynn and called in some friends who wanted to take the racket big time. He was going to squeeze me out of it when it was my world, my gambling hell, my crossroads of the world. The Tetopolis arena was mine. I turned back to the computer screen as an excuse not to see that the tears were welling in Tim's eyes as he ran it on. Mine, I tell you, and I won't let everyone else have it. A flurry of motion behind me, a muffled curse from Byrne, and Tim ran out of the office, back into the lecture hall. Moments later, a new avatar burst into the battlements of the arena wearing the enchanter's ramhorn headdress and a billowing cape. Mine, it cried, raising its staff. Lightning bolts rained down from the sky, scattering the crowd in the grandstand and invading trolls alike. The enchanter's voice rose to a roar. The arena lives and dies with me. The lightning bolts coalesced into a brilliant flash, and then the computer screen went dark. Sparks lit up the lecture hall just beyond the door as Doyle beat a hasty retreat to my earbud. Nasty temper on that one. Ah, hell, Byrne cried, launching himself into the lecture hall. I didn't even try to follow. He was a running back at West Point. I struggled to achieve a 10-minute mile. Byrne's face was ashen when he returned. I swallowed hard. Is he? Byrne nodded. He obviously knew where the stripped wire was. The end. I guess divine
Nailed it.
inspiration worked. Yes, you nailed that one.
Wow. I'm going to be honest with you. Halfway through, I went, was it Tim who I guessed? I don't remember.
Was Tim who you
It
guessed.
was Tim. I just kept thinking,
when you look at it from the back, so Tim was the one who set up the electronics.
Yes, that's
so
what really
he was
drew me
the
to him.
obvious one to have had access and actually strip the wire.
Everyone had access, but because the access wasn't explained for the other characters, it almost made you assume that they didn't.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't thought out and told enough to the audience for me to think, okay, it clearly wasn't an option. Not because they couldn't have done it, but because the scenario wasn't orchestrated for them to have done it.
Well, when the scene opens, they're already seated at the front table, so we don't know where they were before the scene opens.
Exactly. And because we're not informed, it's not something that, it's clearly not something that Doyle and them thought interesting enough to even ask about.
Well, certainly it would have been impossible for Cat staff to strip the wire.
Yes.
He wasn't even there.
Exactly. That's why I was like, it's not him. Also, because it's too obvious him, and we always game these things, fellas. Remember, it's never the first suspect. Unless there's, sometimes it's the first suspect. Anyway.
Would you like to learn a little about Dungeons & Dragons?
I would love to know a little about Dungeons & Dragons.
So for those people like me who don't really know what Dungeons & Dragons is, it is a role-playing game originally developed and designed by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. First publication was in 1974, which means this is the 50th anniversary of the game that launched a modern role-playing industry. According to Wikipedia, D&D was an advancement in traditional wargaming that allowed players to create their own characters and take on adventures in a fantasy setting. Other games on the market in the mid to late 1900s had elements of character-based role-playing, world simulations, or fantasy scene designs, but they were all separate. Nobody had put them all together before. Early on, D&D experienced criticism from some religious groups for alleged promotion of witchcraft, murder, satanic themes, and the presence of barely contained breasts. Which is every game like this that I've ever seen Dad or you play.
Hey, I don't think our viewers need to know what exactly.
Female bodies that defy gravity.
Hey, we're not Mother.
What? I'm just saying. Just saying.
No.
If you did the structural analysis, she would fall down. She had really strong muscles.
She's not human, so it doesn't work like that. They have different muscles.
Well, the game made changes to reduce the controversial content. The controversy actually worked to increase sales in defiance of the outrage. D&D is playable now on tabletops and online. A couple links in the show notes, one to the Wikipedia article and then to the website for D&D. So let me tell you a little bit about our author today, Erica. So as you heard, Erica is the author of The Brooklyn North Murder, the first full-length Watson and Doyle mystery, as well as 5 other novels set in the Hudson Valley, including the award-winning The Curse of the Braddock's Brides. Erica is the past president of the Mystery Writers of America New York chapter, a frequent reviewer and judge. She holds a PhD in comparative literature, which is why she knows so many big words, and published academic work on female folklorists before she decided she'd rather be writing stories herself. Hey, you're getting into folklore and folk music, aren't you, Jack?
Yeah, yes.
Maybe you should have a conversation with Erica.
Apparently. I just like their music, not folklore necessarily.
I like folklore. I like the stories. I think they're cool.
I mean, yeah, it's just not what I'm getting into, particularly at the moment. I also think it's cool.
It's time for the wrap-up. So that wraps up this episode of Mysteries to Die For. Support our show by subscribing, telling a mystery lover about us, giving us a 5-star review. Check out our website, tgwolff.com/podcast for links to this season's authors. Mysteries to Die For is created and hosted by TG Wolff and Jack Wolff. Death of a Dungeon Master was written by Erica Obey. Music and production are by Jack Wolff. Episode art is by TG Wolff. Join us next week for a toe tag, which, as you all know, is a first chapter from a fresh release in the mystery crime or thriller genre, and then come back in 2 weeks for our next original story. All right, Jack, with that, the floor is yours. Take us out.